You saved your entire life to finally begin enjoying retirement. The decades of discipline, maxing out the 401k, living within your means, saying no to things so that one day you could finally say yes. And now that day is here, or it's close, but somehow spending still feels wrong. And what if the biggest risk to your retirement isn't actually running out of money? What if it's running out of time? Now think about that for a second, because most people spend 40 years worrying about whether they'll have enough money for retirement. Very few spend any time worrying about whether they'll have enough retirement left to enjoy the money. You hesitate before booking the trip. You second guess helping your kids. You feel guilty every time you spend on yourself, even though this is exactly what the money was built for. Hi, my name is Cody Crawford, and in this video, I'm going to show you why spending feels so hard, even when you have enough, and what the research says about how retirement spending actually works, what it finally takes to feel comfortable spending that money that you spent a lifetime to build. Now, here's the first part of this, which is the accumulation mindset. And here's what's actually happening. You spent 30 or 35 years training yourself to do one specific thing: save more, spend less, and that mindset was exactly right for your working years. That's what got you here. But that mindset doesn't come with an off switch. Retirement arrives and the mode is supposed to all of a sudden flip. For most people, it doesn't. The frugality that built the savings becomes the anxiety that prevents you from using it, right? You're jumping over the fence so you don't have to wear out the hinges. And actually, Morningstar research does confirm what I see every single week, which is retirees with sufficient assets often underspend relative to what they could safely withdraw. And many actually see their wealth increase across retirement rather than decrease. Now, you're probably saying, Cody, that's what we want. But for higher net worth retirees specifically, many could spend substantially more while preserving meaningful wealth for their families. Most choose not to. And it's not because the money isn't there. It's because the permission to spend isn't. And I see this all the time. A retired couple sits across from me. Their house is paid off. Their retirement accounts are healthy. Their income plan works beautifully. They have no realistic danger of running out of money. And yet they're debating whether they should spend $8,000 on a family vacation. Not because they can't afford it, but because spending just somehow feels irresponsible. So I like to ask them a simple question. If I could guarantee that 10 years from now, your accounts would still be healthy, would you take that trip? And the answer is almost always immediate. They tell me absolutely. And then I ask the real question: what are you actually waiting for? Because most of the time, they're not waiting for more money. They are waiting for more certainty. That certainty, it never arrives. There will always be another recession, another election, more headlines, another reason to wait, but your health does not wait. Your energy doesn't wait. Your grandchildren do not stay 8 years old forever. And that's why retirement planning isn't really about money most of the time. It is about time. Let's look at the spending curve here. Let me give you some data most people have never seen, and it really changes everything. See, retirement spending is not flat. It actually declines significantly as you age. And there's been research from among many JP Morgan Asset Management that shows the average retiree spending actually gradually declines by more than 30% between 60 and 85. Now, financial planners, we like to call these the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years. So the go-go years are roughly the first 10 years of retirement. That's where your energy is high, your health is good, you can travel, you're going to Machu Picchu in July, you're active, you can do the things you spent a lifetime putting off, and frankly, the things that you promised you would do. And this is when spending is actually the highest. And frankly, that's when it should be. Then come the slow-go years. And so here the pace naturally slows. Long-haul travel becomes a lot less appealing. Spending on experiences drops meaningfully, right? You could still do all those things you could do in the go-go years. You just don't want to. Now, finally, the no-go years. And Tom Hegner likes to say this is where you're not leaving the building till you're leaving the building. But here, discretionary spending has largely stopped. Healthcare costs rise, and the life you imagine retirement would be is largely behind you. The pattern is clear. Spending is typically highest in the early retirement years, and it gradually declines as people move into their late 70s and 80s. And the window for those experiences you planned is front-loaded into retirement. It's not spread evenly across it. Every year you sit on that money, hesitating, waiting, is a year from that window which you will never get back. That hesitation isn't just costing you experiences. It is creating a financial problem as well. Now, if you're watching this thinking, Yeah, I can see that window's closing, Cody. I know I should be spending more confidently. I just don't actually know what my number is. That's exactly what we can help figure out here at Retirement Wealth Professionals. So there is a link in the description below. You can grab 30 minutes on the calendar completely free. I can kind of understand where you're at, what you're trying to do, look at your specific income, your savings, your tax picture, and then we can really find out what that spending capacity is so that it's not a feeling, it's not a guess, it's math and science. We can help you with that number you can spend every month without ever having to second guess it again. Now, let me show you why that hesitation is also quietly making your tax problem worse. So let's look at the financial cost of not spending. When you don't spend, you don't touch the IRA. The balance keeps growing, and a larger IRA, of course, means larger required minimum distributions later in retirement. Larger R&Ds mean a higher tax bracket. More of your Social Security may become taxable. Medicare IRMAA surcharges may get triggered. The caution that felt like it was protecting your money can actually create significantly larger tax bills than spending would have. And there is a cost that doesn't show up in any spreadsheet. So the Harvard study of adult development, which was one of the longest studies ever conducted on happiness in adult life, actually found that strong relationships and meaningful connection are among the clearest predictors of health and happiness. And the families that I've watched struggle in the 15 years that I've done this, the most in retirement, they are not the ones who spent too much. They are actually the ones who kept score for so long they forgot what the money was for. Now, what gives you permission? You're probably wondering, so why does spending actually feel wrong even when I have enough? And almost always it comes down to one thing. You have a balance. You do not have a number. A balance is a figure you just check anxiously. A number is what you can actually spend from a real plan that accounts for your income, your taxes, your longevity, and what happens if the market drops and the economy doesn't cooperate. Without that number, every purchase, it feels like a guess, and guessing feels dangerous. And here's what changes that: an income plan. And at Retirement Wealth Professionals, we often tell clients there are really only 3 buckets of money if we just keep it simple. You got money for living, money for legacy, and money for long-term care. And the mistake that most retirees make is really treating all 3 buckets of money like it's all for legacy. A plan that says, here is exactly what I can spend each month. Here is where it comes from. Here is what happens if the market takes a 30% drop in year 1. And here is the number built around your life so that every time you go to spend, the answer is already there. And when that plan exists, the hesitation lifts. It really frees you up and gives you that permission so that spending feels like living on a paycheck you earned over 35 years of discipline. That's what the money was always for. And this is the part I want to leave you with, because after helping, again, almost 1,000 families over the last decade and a half, the pattern is impossible to ignore. I have never, not once, had someone sit across from me and say, Cody, I wish I spent less in retirement. Not once. What I hear more than almost anything else is, Cody, I wish we'd taken that trip when we still could. I wish we hadn't waited so long to help the kids. I wish I hadn't spent the first 5 years of retirement feeling so guilty every time I spent money, right? These aren't people who ran out of money, far from it. These are people who had enough, and usually more than enough, and spent years living smaller than they had to because nobody ever showed them the actual number. So the go-go years passed, the energy they had at 63 and 64 and 65, the years when the trip was still easy, when the grandkids still wanted to do everything with them, those years went by while they were waiting to feel ready. And here's what makes that so hard to sit with. The money was there the entire time. It was never a savings problem. It was a clarity problem because nobody ever really showed them the actual number and synthesized it. Nobody ever told them, yeah, you can take the trip, you can spend more, you can enjoy what you've built. And again, after 15 years of doing this, I've noticed something fascinating, which is I've never had a retiree tell me that they wish they'd spent less time with their family. They wish they hadn't taken that vacation. I wish I hadn't created those memories. But I have heard plenty say, I wish we'd gone sooner. I wish we'd done it while our health was better. I wish we'd stopped worrying, having anxiety chipping away at us every day. Because retirement planning isn't just about building wealth. Building wealth is halftime. The second half is learning how to turn that wealth into a life, not just make a living. Make a life into experiences, into freedom, into memories. And that's the part most people were never taught. So if you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I've worked my whole life for this, I have the savings, but spending still makes me uncomfortable, and I genuinely don't know what I'm actually allowed to spend, that's exactly the conversation that I'm going to invite you to have with me over here at Retirement Wealth Professionals. Again, there is a link in the description below where you can grab 30 minutes on my calendar completely free. It's not a pitch. We're not going to sell you anything. What we're going to do is really have an informal, relaxed conversation where we can look at your income, your savings, your tax picture, and we can start to build exactly what you can spend for the rest of your retirement. Not what you hope, not what you fear, but what the math and science actually dictates. Because once you know the number, then something amazing happens. That guilt fades, the hesitation disappears, and the money finally starts doing what it was always supposed to do: serve your life, not the other way around. And if you're not quite ready for that conversation yet, that's okay. Click on the video on your screen next. And remember, real wealth is not measured in rates of return. It is measured in the freedom to use your time exactly the way you want. So I hope this helped. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.